Hey everyone, I'm Anthony with Courage and Grow, and today I'm going to show you my technique, my method for planning a color palette for your website. And this will also include, like, if you actually have trouble even coming to what that color palette might be in the first place, like what colors to even select, we're going to come up with, or we're going to discuss a pretty nifty way of figuring out what that initial primary color is. So if you don't even know where to start, this video is great for you. But if you do, it's a great idea to watch this video anyway, because if you have, like, you want your brand to be blue, then there's still some techniques here that I think you'll really appreciate if you don't already have a set color palette. Before we get started, I wanted to say it's really important to have that color palette identified prior to doing really anything in terms of your website, in terms of your logo. If you don't have a color scheme identified, then you're really not going to be anchored in the things that you do, and your website and your brand are going to reflect kind of that adrift at sea kind of, it won't be centered, and it will be hodgepodge, I suppose you could say. So it's a good idea to really settle on that color palette prior to proceeding with any other work. So let's get started. Let's talk about that. So I'm going to move me out of the way. Ooh, look at that. That was the recording software that I use. Anyway, so I'm going to move me out of the way, and then we're going to pop over to the 99 Designs Psychology of Color page. And right now, this is a really great tool to use if you're unsure, if you're starting at the very beginning and you have no freaking clue what color you want to be your primary color. So let me say one other quick thing before we move on. You really should have 5 colors as part of your basic color palette. Number 1 is the primary color. Number 2 is a shade of the primary color. Number 3 is an accent color. Number 4 is a neutral light or dark, and number 5 is the opposite, a neutral light or dark. So we'll talk about what those are. Typically for those neutral light and dark, those are like either if you're going with a light color scheme, we're just going to assume a light color scheme for your website, like this one right here, right? It's got the background is a light color and all the text is a dark color. So that's a light color scheme. If you're going with a dark color scheme, you'll just reverse most of this, but most sites stick with a light color palette or a light color scheme. So the neutral dark is the text color, and the neutral light is the background color. And you'll see in this case, I would actually say that this website has 2 neutral lights. Let's see. Well, man, it's really just one. This is kind of a header gradient. You can see it fades here, but this is their neutral light in the background. So yeah, we're going to use this tool to help us identify our primary color. And then I have some techniques to show you on how to get the rest of that palette and get it identified and locked in. So let's scroll down, and we're going to use this 99D logo color generator. And it's rudimentary. It doesn't give you a whole lot, but it'll give you an idea about, it forces you to kind of think, what does my brand what adjective does my brand reflect? And then it'll spit out a color based on that. So we'll use Courage and Grow. I don't love the binary whole thing, especially the feminine, masculine. It's, it is on a spectrum. We'll say that, but I don't love the implied binary. But this is just it's an exercise to kind of get you thinking, and it takes like 30 seconds. So I would suggest that have an idea of what you want your brand to be before you start with this. And then when you step into it, don't spend too much time agonizing over every single little detail. It's just going to spit out a color. So, and one other thing I'll say before we do this is, if you know what your primary color is, then you can probably skip this. But if you're curious, you can do it anyway. It doesn't take very long. I will, of course, put the link to this site in the description, but you can see it there if you just feel like typing it in. Okay, so the Courage and Grow brand, I'm going to say, tends toward feminine. It's going to be a little more playful. I would put it in the middle of the spectrum on luxurious, affordable. It's going to be a little more modern. I would say in the middle of youthful and mature. And it's going to be a little more loud. That's where I would put the Courage and Grow brand. Just kind of going off this really quick. Then hit Show Me the Colors. And it's going to give me a primary color. And it thinks pink. So that's great. I went with purple. it's a little more reflective of my brand. So my brand is a little weird, right? Courage and Grow, its primary color is purple, but then its accent are rainbow, right? Because yeah. But let's just go with this and see how this works. It gives me a specific hex code, which we don't necessarily need. It's also giving me a suggestion as to the color palette. Now, if you like what it suggests, you can skip this next step, but I recommend you take the next step. You can also hit See More Pink Designs, and it'll give you all these suggestions. But rather than do this, my next suggestion is once you have your primary color identified, try this little hack. So we're going to come over to Google, and we're going to type whatever that primary color is, and then website designs. So we'll just do pink website designs. And then we're going to flip over to images. And now we've got a bunch of websites that are already designed that we can sample from. So let's just see here. Which one do I like? I don't know yet. All right, let's just pick this first one because. All right, we've settled on this as our primary color is pink. We like this design for this site. And so the next step is we want to identify a full palette, and we want those 5. You may have more or less depending on your brand, but 5, it's, again, just to reiterate, primary, shade of the primary, secondary, neutral dark, neutral light. Okay. So that's kind of your goal, and then you can manipulate from there. We're going to use a tool called Coolors, which is I love this tool. It's completely free. And I would recommend, first of all, that you sign up for a free account, because then you can save your color palette in the account, and that way you don't have to worry about it. So after you've logged in, you might end up on this page and you'll hit start the generator or generate, or it may land you on the generator page itself, which looks like this. So we're not going to bother with that. It gives you a generic color palette that it drops in. I'm going to close out of the ad here. And then this is I love this. So we're going to come back here. You know what? I'm actually going to change, just for the sake of outlining this, I want to change to, because pink is a little tricky. Here's where I'm stumbling, is I'm looking for one so I can emphasize the accent color, so that way you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, let's actually use this one. I hate this. I really do. Like this is just not my favorite, but we're going to use this because I can show you all the steps. So let's use this. We're going to right click, or I believe it's control click on a Mac, but I'm on Windows. So we're going to right click, and then and I'm in Chrome, and I'm going to choose copy image address. And what that will do is it loads if I open a new tab, it loads the direct image. So you want to be sure when you do this not to choose copy link address, because that will actually take you to where the link goes. You want image address. You could also just download this image. That's another way of doing it, but this way is just faster. So we've copied the image address. We're going to come back to Coolors and choose this little camera guy right here, and then choose URL and paste, which I'm using Control V or Command V on a Mac, and hit OK. And what it will do is it will pull that image in. So now we want 5 colors, but in this case, we should be able to identify all 5 from this. So what you can do is then you can start dragging the slider, and it will automatically detect the colors that are in the palette. So you can start that way, that's fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my primary color. So let's say we want this pink to be the primary. I clicked on that, and then I can drag these little bubbles around to the color. So that's the primary. Now we want a shade of the primary. Sometimes that's in here. We can call this the shade. That's fine. This might be the secondary shade of my color, but I can show you another tip in a second if that's not how we want to go. So, but we'll identify that for now. The third color is the accent. So we'll choose this hideous, gross, like couch, disgusting green. Can you tell I love that? And then we'll do a neutral dark and a neutral light. So the light is already identified. It's fine. That's probably just straight white. It's probably, oh, wow, that sounded funny. Straight white. I don't even know. I'm just not even going to edit that out because it's such a disaster. What a train wreck. Anyway, so we need the neutral dark. And so I'm going to drag this over on top of the black that's here. So we have this color palette. It literally looks like pimento loaf. It's disgusting, but It's fine. If this is your brand, my apologies for dumping all over it, but it's horrible. So, but you get the point. So then once we have the colors identified, we'll hit next and then open in the generator and it'll populate those. This actually isn't just a direct white. It's a slightly different shade. The white hex code is FFFFFF. So I see there's E's in here, so it's not exactly white. And then it gives you a color palette, right? You can see here. So now another thing that you can do is, let's say that we like this specific color and we want to, instead of having this like bold, it calls it rose madder, pink shade, let's copy the hex code. So when you click on it, you can copy it'll pull up the hex code, and then we're going to paste it in this one. So it's the same thing twice, but then we're going to choose this view shades button, and look at this little fancy guy here. Look at that. And then we'll just choose an alternative shade that better blends with that color. So now we have our color palette. It's a little better defined, and we can also adjust this. Maybe I want this to be a little more bold, and you can play with this. So now what I want to do is, I hate this green with like a deep passion. It is absolutely hideous. So what I'm going to do, I want to lock my two shades in place. We'll lock the white. The white's fine. The black, if you like this black, that's fine. It might work with this brand because it's got more of like, I don't know, like a magazine, it's a different black. Usually my preferred black is to go with more of a charcoal, and so the 33333 code is fine. But as I look at that, I actually liked the other one better. So I'm going to undo it. I did that by hitting Control Z on my keyboard or Command Z on a Mac. So I'm going to lock that one in place. So now, I don't know why it unlocked everything, but that's fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start hitting the space bar. Okay, that last one was Hooker's green. I don't know if you caught that, but like, okay, let me undo it real fast. Yeah, it's Hooker's green. So we're just all over the place with this tutorial. And it's going to start suggesting potential colors as accent colors. I hated that green, so we're not going to use that. Wait a minute. I actually kind of like this one. So it totally depends on the brand. Like, this has nothing to do with Courage. I know we started there with the pink just to get a primary color, but it totally depends on your brand. So this has almost like a nautical with flair. I don't even know. I'm a disaster. It is 7:35 in the morning on a Thursday, and I'm recording a video for you. Anyway, once you've settled on your color palette, then you can hit save, give it a, this is not Courage and Grow, and save the color palette, and then it will live in your palettes library so you can come to reference it at any time. Then if you decide, I actually don't need this other color, you could certainly come in, and this is great because before, Coolors only allowed, it was locked in at 5 colors. You could not change the number, you could not add or remove any colors, but now you can. So let's say we only need those 4. This is great because now I can just adjust my palette as it is. And you can come back in and make tweaks over time. So the things that you'll need these colors for, the primary color is going to be the color that you're using primarily on your website. So if we come back to this hideous thing, let's actually come back to the one I picked initially. Okay, how about this one? So you see there's a lot of, you're primarily using your neutral light, right? It's a light color scheme. You want your colors to be not offensive. Your background color, your primary color should be your neutral light. If you're doing a dark color scheme, it should be your neutral dark. Incredibly important not to overstuff with color. Then you're going to use your primary color throughout as the accents. Perhaps you want to do a gradient button, right? That's where your secondary color comes in, your shade, this color here. So you can do gradient transitions. You need to have like 3 side-by-side buttons, and you want them to all be slightly different shades. You might want to add a second shade as long as it's monochromatic. You don't want to have 4 billion colors going on. Then the accent color, you'll use, where I'm starting to think is like this might not be a great color, is you're going to use your accent color for potentially for your links or for other things where you need a separate pop of color to draw people's attention. So maybe you have a separate call to action that's different from your primary and you want to use a different color. So this would work great for a call to action. In this case, with this palette, I would probably make the links this raspberry color because they would pop and they're going to stand out among all the other text, and then use this as my primary, and then I can use this as the secondary pops of color. And then all of my text would be this color. I do not recommend ever using solid black. I just don't think, first of all, this is not actual black. I mean, if you're talking print, we're not talking print, it's web, but it's not a true black in a print sense, but and that's a whole digression. Don't worry about that. But I don't really care for the black. I mean, if that's the right hint of black, the right shade of black for your color palette, that's fine. I tend to always stay away from that and do a more charcoal-y black. I find that is more of a modern look. If that's not your brand, then certainly go with it. But like you'll see most of the time you're seeing black on more modern sites. You're not getting black. You're getting like a charcoal. And that's true in almost every one that I pulled up here. I can see it just by looking at it. So, yeah, that's basically how this works. That's how I identify color palettes all the time. And it works very, very well, especially if you don't have a kind of an anchor point for it. But once you have this, now you've got a thing that you can reference. And it's pretty cool because if you just copy this link, the way the links work is you can see here, these are actually the hex codes, right? And that's how they line up. So if I just copy this link, Control-C on a Windows, Command-C on a Mac, and then open an incognito or in private browsing window, so it's Control-Shift-N on a Windows, Command-Shift-N on a Mac, and then paste that in. Obviously, I'm not logged in here, but this color palette is shareable. So when it decides it feels like loading, this is shareable. It doesn't this is not my library one because I'm not logged in, but this is editable for anyone that you send it to. They can use it as their own. But it's a quick way to send a color palette around. And I think it's pretty cool. Now, the only question I don't know is with the library, am I able to share this specific one here? I don't think so. So that's just, something to be aware of. If I hit view, nope. This is very interesting. I've actually not used this before where it's giving you all of the other options and a quick way to copy it. So you're getting the RGB and the CMYK and all that stuff. The name is pretty cool. Like it's nice that they give you names of these colors as well, because then you can reference them verbally, right? It's the French rose color versus the raspberry color. Like they're giving you a name so you don't have to like Space Cadet. Like they're entertaining. So yeah, this is how I identify a color palette. This is a phenomenal tool. All three of these things using Psychology of Colors, using Google Images, and then that color, insert the color here, website designs, pink, blue, red, whatever. And then using Coolors to lock in your color palette. And then make sure you're referencing this when you do your designs. Settle on a color palette. Start your designs. If it needs to be tweaked, tweak it. And make sure your new colors, if you tweak it, end up in Coolors so you have a reference point all the time. And you're not kind of drifting out to sea with your colors. You're anchored in one place. Okay. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You can email me at anthony@courageandgrow.com and, we can get a conversation going. You're also always welcome to drop a note in the comments. I keep an eye on those. And I think that's pretty straightforward. So if you do have questions or comments, thoughts, happy to have a conversation with you. But until next time, I hope that you find the perfect color palette for your site. Cheers.